What's up everyone? Today I'm going to be comparing two compact cameras. One is a Fujifilm X100VI and the other is a Leica Q2, and I think these two actually compare great against each other. I'm Nicholas Clayton Lee, let's get into it. So I know that there's a Q3 and a Q3 out there, and I'd love to get my hands on those one day. I'd love to own one day. And I do know that a lot of people compare the Leica Q3 to the Fujifilm X100VI, but to me it's not much of a comparison because the price of the Q3 is like quadruple the amount of the Fujifilm X100VI, and I don't really see that as a comparison because you can't really compare things that are two different prices. Like you're comparing like a Honda to a Ferrari. That to me doesn't make much of a sense. Anyway, that's why I think that the Leica Q2 is a better comparison in 2024, because in 2024 you can get this for around $4,500 Canadian, which is around like $3,200 US, whereas the Fujifilm X100VI is around $2,200 Canadian, which is around like $1,500 US. So the price range wise, it's a lot closer, and for some people, that doubling the price of this might be worth it. So other than the price range being a lot closer than what the Q3 actually is, this one actually rocks a 47 megapixel full frame sensor, whereas this one is a 40 megapixel APS-C sensor. The lenses is a 28mm f1.7, which a lot of people actually say is more of a 24mm lens, whereas this one is a 23mm f2, but it's also an APS-C, so you're looking more of a 35mm, as for the f-stop is probably like a 2.8. As for the EVS, they're pretty much exact same, with the Fujifilm having 10,000 dots more. Both camera bodies are weather sealed, but you do have to get a lens filter for the Fujifilm in the front just so that it's completely weather sealed. Other similarities also include both cameras having the anti-aliasing filter removed, so you do have a lot sharper images when it comes out from camera. But there are still a lot of differences between these two. Let's start off with the Fujifilm X100VI. First off is this tilting screen, and it's actually pretty upsetting that the Q2 doesn't have one because I love shooting waist down. Other things is the flash. I actually haven't used this flash much because I haven't really shot in the dark, and even if I do, I have another flash, the Godox flash that I put on top, which is a lot brighter. So if I know that I'm gonna go out at night and I'm at like a party, I will bring that flash along. It's actually nice to have it if you just like don't have one on you, and this would be a great option, but it's not that bright. But still good enough, whereas the Q2 doesn't even have that. Something that's really good about this is that there's an ND filter in here. There's a 4-stop ND filter, and it makes a huge difference for me because I love shooting panning shots, especially in the morning or when it's bright out, so that I can add that stop, and if I need even more darkness, I just add another ND filter on top, so I get a lot more stops, whereas this I am limited and I do have to turn up the f-stop to kind of compensate. Another thing about the Fujifilm is that the recording on this is actually 6.2K, whereas this one's only 4K. For video wise, there's also a mic in this camera, whereas the Q2 doesn't. The battery life on this camera is supposed to be better than that, but maybe it's because after using the Leica, I've actually slowed down a lot, and I actually haven't been spamming it as much as I use on this. So I feel that the battery on the Leica is actually somewhat better because just holding this Leica makes me shoot differently. So I can't really say much, but technically this one gets around 80 more shots than this one. It's around 450 and this is around 370. Technically. As well, the weight on this camera is around 210 grams lighter than this camera, so it is nicer to hold and it's a lot lighter when you're just bringing it out every day. And lastly is autofocus. The autofocus on this camera is a lot better than the Q2. There are 425 focus points on the Fujifilm X100VI, where there's only 49 on the Q2. And there's eye tracking and there is subject detection on this, so it is better and you can shoot a lot faster with the X100VI. It does seem that the Leica Q2 cannot even compare with the Fujifilm X100VI, but there are some pros for the Leica Q2. One being the viewfinder magnification. It's a 0.76 times, whereas the Fujifilm is just a 0.66 times. Another thing is the lens. It is shooting at a 1.7, making this also great for low light as well. The native ISO on this is actually 100,000, whereas for the Fujifilm it's only 12,800, so you can shoot really well in low light. Also, the lens on this, there's a macro mode, so you can shoot macros, get a lot closer to subjects. Obviously, it doesn't compare to an actual camera using macro lenses, but it's still a nice option to have, especially if you're doing this for every day. Lastly is the continuous shooting. This actually can shoot 20 frames per second, whereas this can only shoot at 11 frames per second. But something that's not that great, you can shoot at 20 frames per second, but if you're not in focus, it's pretty much useless. I've never shot in 20 frames per second because I never found the need to, and I noticed that after like 2 or 3 frames, your subject is out of focus. So I find it pretty pointless, but it's still an advantage for the Leica Q2. So at the end of the day, these two are somewhat comparable. Obviously they have the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth, the image stabilization, and all of that stuff that's pretty given. But at the same time, there's still a lot that's very different. But for me, I just don't know which one I should stay with, and I do kind of need help. The image quality coming out of the Leica Q2 is magnificent. I've never owned a full frame camera, and this is my first, and I gotta say I love this. I originally wasn't planning on keeping this for long. I just wanted to know the Leica system, and I wanted to kind of figure it out, see what the big hype is about, and I kind of fell into the ecosystem now, I guess, and I love it. I love this camera. Obviously the ergonomic on this camera is not as good as a Fujifilm X100VI, given that this is not that good, but I just bought a nice grip for this, so it made it a lot better. Obviously I can buy another grip for this, but it's very expensive. Also, the battery on the Leica Q2 is also very expensive, and I actually haven't even bought another battery for it. But I just don't find the need to buy an extra battery because I said before that using this camera actually changed the style of me shooting. I tend to slow down a lot more. I tend to try to find the right shots. Even if I do take my camera up, about to take it, I tend to just kind of see if it's worth taking the photo. Whereas for this, I'm able to take a lot more photos and I'm able to spam a lot more, and the autofocus is a lot faster. Everything else is a lot faster on this compared to this. But there's something about the Leica. It's not the look. I know a lot of people talk about the photo looks, Leica look that you have. Fuji has their own look. They have a lot of different simulations and it's a lot of fun to play with. But it's not that. The Leica it's actually making me take a lot of black and white photos, as I mentioned in my previous videos, and I really enjoy it. This camera is built like a tank, and it makes me want to shoot photos that can last forever, and black and white photos tend to be able to do that. And just holding this camera in your hand is a completely different feeling than holding this Fujifilm X100VI. I do love both, but I don't know which one I should keep. The Fujifilm, I've had a lot of great time with this. It's a lot of fun, it's very light. It was my first compact camera, and I find that if I am just getting into photography again, this is a great camera to have. But it's not a Leica. Leica also has this advantage of it being a Leica. People look at you differently because it's somewhat of a more prestigious camera to own, and I think people show a bit more respect rather than holding a Fujifilm camera. And don't get me wrong, I'm a huge Fujifilm guy, I've always been, but it's a different feeling when people know it's a Leica. I know like people shouldn't really care what others think of you, but the respect that you get from others knowing that you have a Leica is a very different feeling, and not everyone understands that you should show everyone respect. It's a very different thing. to me at least. Anyway, back to cameras now. If you're not a person who loves to take their time composing each shot before they actually take it, I don't think the Leica is for you. If you like to give yourself more chances of an error, but you can still get a photo eventually, yeah, the Fujifilm is actually great because it is a faster camera. Actually, surprisingly though, I'm able to get quite a lot of panning shots with this, even just taking 1 or 2 photos. I take a lot less photos than I do with this. I don't know why. But something I actually really like about the Leica is that they don't have a shutter count. So if you sell it out again, people don't really know. Whereas this one, there is the shutter count and everyone asks about it, so. Anyway, the reason for me actually doing this video, it's a comparison at the same time. It's more of asking you guys which camera I should actually keep, because I do want to sell one because it will help my bank account a lot more. But yeah, I'm trying to decide which one I think I should keep, or which one do you guys like more. Anyway, please let me know. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks, and I'll see you guys next time.